Thanks, Mark. Thank you very much. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Northern Ireland Tourist Board and Susie for inviting me here today. As Mark mentioned, I started 22 years ago in the business. Actually started for Aiken Promotions, which you all know is I think most of you should know, they're a Belfast company, and started working under the tutorship and mentorship of Jim. So here we are today, 22 years on. My presentation is going to be split into 3 areas. I think the first area is going to be a background into Live Nation and what we do as a company. I'll try and keep that reasonably light and reasonably short and swift. The second piece is some theory and hopefully some wisdom on activation and the importance of activation. It's important to know with activation that it is only part of the sponsorship program and sponsorship mix. So just because I'm on first and I'm talking about activation doesn't mean it's the most important part. We think it is, but we try and advocate that good activation normally and gives a good experience to consumers and sponsors alike that makes them come back for more and sponsor more. So I'll be talking quite a bit about good activation. And then the third piece will be some light visual imagery of some of the festivals and some of the best activation that we've seen over the last couple of years. So without further ado, I'm just going to give you a brief, this should wake you up, I'm going to give you a brief video intro into Live Nation. So here's your first chance to use these. So I was going to ask many different questions like, there's one person in this room that was at Oxygen, do you know who it is? But I probably wouldn't recognize him, but can you name the band whose track was used in our video? Was it A, Massive Attack, B, Pendulum, C, Chemical Brothers, or D, Metallica? It's a difficult one. Oh, wow. Yeah, can I tell you does it? Yep, you were right, 44%. It's B, it was Pendulum. So as you can see by the short DVD, Live Nation, our reach is global. We have one access point, which is the brand Live Nation Entertainment. We have 200 million customers globally, which come from people who go to concerts, people who access our portals, people who purchase merchandise off us, etc. We have 800 brand partners and advertisers globally. We're one of the biggest rights holders, certainly within the live entertainment industry, particularly in North America, and Central Europe. We are expanding, as you can see, between Beijing, Shanghai, Australia. So there's a lot of emerging markets that Live Nation are moving into in terms of the brand. Particularly from a marketing partnerships perspective, we've been very strong in engaging overarching deals, particularly in Europe and America. Brands like Coca-Cola, Carlsberg, etc., coming as the official product. I think a lot of what I'll be talking about today is how they've taken opportunities and expanded in terms of activation to reach their target consumer. We've 250 managed artists. Probably the most famous of those would be, or the most high profile would be U2, Lady Gaga, Jay-Z, etc. And basically we offer a 360-degree service to them. So basically we look after everything from touring, selling their tickets, selling their merchandise, the full package. So it's very attractive for artists to basically have a one-stop shop. This is very much a growing part of our business. We've 2,000 artists toured, so we would manage about 2,000 tours. That wouldn't be per annum, that's probably since the company started, but we would have certainly a couple of hundred on tour every year. And then we would have annually 20,000 concerts produced across the world. So by all of that, I'm not sure if I said it already, but we're the largest live entertainment company in the world. Our structure, there's 6 elements to Live Nation Entertainment. One is concert promotion, which is exactly, I mean, I don't know how many of you have been to the Odyssey. You've probably been to events here that we've seen, the straightforward concerts where we would tour the likes of Lady Gaga, etc. That would be base concert promotion. Festivals, we're the largest producer of festivals in the world. Events like, you probably know, Reading, Leeds, for our Festival Republic brand, all the way through Europe. We'd have partnership then in events like Glastonbury, where we'd manage the acts and the site for Glastonbury, etc. Ticketing, we own Ticketmaster globally, so this is a really exciting new part of our business, which has been able to offer brands opportunity to be part of the ticket and the ticket experience, then using all the ticketing information in terms of direct targeting consumers, etc. Venue operation, we manage 250 plus venues, manage and own 250 venues globally. I work in the O2 in Dublin, so the O2 is that's where our flagship in terms of naming right, one of our most modern venues. E-commerce, social media, Live Nation Analytics, which is using a lot of the information we generate through ticketing and through data capture at events to generate opportunities for our marketing partners. And then artist management. So, as I mentioned, U2, Madonna. You might have seen, some of you might have seen the Smirnoff Nightlife exchange program that's out there at the moment with Madonna. That's probably one of the most up-to-date examples we would have of how we would have worked with Diageo and getting Madonna on board to work as a brand ambassador for the Nightlife project. So that would have been done between Diageo and our New York office. Live Nation festivals, 49 festivals, from mad ones in Denmark and Finland all the way through Europe into Pink Pop in Holland, Reading, Leeds, Hard Rock Calling, Tea in the Park, etc. We've about 4 million fans. This is very much the growing part of our business. Festivals as a phenomenon is growing and growing, and particularly in America, they're probably you describe at the infancy of festivals. For years they didn't really get festivals. They got one-day events, didn't really get festivals. So now the emergence of festivals is, very exciting, particularly as it's such a major population. And this, what I will be showing you in terms of activation today, will be mainly festivals, but that's because we work in the festival business, and it's probably easy for me to talk about activation at festivals because I see them every day, and particularly in my 9 years as a consultant for Live Nation, I spent most of my time at festivals. But it's not to say activation is right across any sponsorship. So, excuse my examples, but they're probably the clearest images I can give you. We probably have over 500 bands across all our festivals, across 10 countries, and we're the largest producer of festivals in the world. Live Nation Ireland, we own and manage the O2, which is the second busiest venue in the world, as of Polestar recently, behind the O2 in London. Again, it just shows the appetite of tickets for the whole island. The Odyssey, the O2, there's an enormous appetite to go out and be entertained in Ireland. And I think that gives us great opportunities to offer sponsors opportunities and brands opportunities to be part of the entertainment business. I don't know if any of you have been to Dublin to see the Grand Canal Theatre, our new jewel in our crown, which is looks very like the Titanic building now, actually, with the arches and that. But I'd say they might rob the idea of us, but I don't know. It's we really needed a theatre, 2000 theatre, to bring West End product to Dublin and to the island, and to get people stop going to London to see shows, big West End shows. And it's been phenomenally successful so far. And we manage and sponsor pouring rights for the MCD portfolio of venues, which is the Olympia, the Gaiety, and the Academy. Live Nation Ireland, our festivals, we manage the sponsor negotiation and activation on behalf of MC for Slane, Oxygen, Marley Park Festival, and Electric Picnic. So we would represent them, work with them on a sort of a co-negotiation on pouring rights and developing their marketing partnerships and tying them in with the Live Nation marketing partners. We'd also, obviously, we'd be very familiar with V Festival and Belsonic up here in the north, so we've been working with the guys there and developing some opportunities there. So, I'm just conscious of the time, so I'm sort of bombing through this a bit, but there'll be a time to ask me a few questions at the end if you need to know more about Live Nation. So, good activation, a true catalyst for responsive success. Just to reiterate what I said at the start, I just don't want this to be, we need to be very clear about sponsorship. There's many elements of sponsorship, right through from, identifying what a brand feel, or depending if you're a rights holder or if you're a brand, or what's the right sponsorship for us, all the way through to the negotiation, all the way through to the acquisition, and so just take it for the purpose of this. You now have the sponsorship, so you have it. You've negotiated it, and you're now sitting with this sponsorship, and you're very excited about it, and you're going to say, right, how are we going to activate this? What are we going to do? So what hopefully I'm going to do now is give you. We have 6 steps that we use in Live Nation to work with sponsors, brands, and then I'll flip it from the rights holder's perspective at the end as well. So I'll be talking from a brands and sponsors perspective at the start, but then I'll flip it back to a rights holder. So what is activation? Activation is the engagement and experience of a concept with consumers of the sponsored. It doesn't have, I've just put event in, but a sponsored event, it could be anything. I think the most important part to realize about this is the engagement and the experience. It's the experiential side of what you're trying to do. And often with activation is, it can pass people by. People take a sponsor an event or sponsor something, and they're delighted to be part of it, and they allocate some budget to it, and it just passes them by because they haven't really created an experience. They haven't really created something that the consumer is going to remember this by. So we developed 6 steps for success from an agency brand perspective to try and combat that and to get people to really, because particularly for festivals, sponsors are now nearly as important as the act. Well, not obviously the major acts, but they are. People go to festivals looking forward to seeing really good experience, really good sponsored activity, get something, or maybe not get something, or different ideas and stuff like that, to be entertained. So the first one is understanding why and what you are sponsoring. And I think if you look at it from a triangle of brand, consumers, and sponsored event, the first thing is your own brand. You've got to understand the DNA of the brand and the attributes of the brand to make a connection with the sponsored event. So what can our brand bring to this? What can our brand, we're a fun brand, we're a very energetic brand, or whatever the key attribute of the brand is. How do we harness that? How do we bring that alive at an event? The consumer, what are the consumer needs? So, what does the consumer, I'm not going to give you the example because I'm going to bring you on to an example in the case study, and I'll reference back to this, but it'll all become very clear when we make the connection that the consumer need, what does the consumer need at in this case a festival, but at an event, or what do they, there's something missing here at this event. What can we give them, or what can we let them experience that's going to be different, that they're going to walk away and they're going to remember this sponsor, they're going to remember why we spent all this money being part of this. And then obviously that links to the sponsored event, so making the connection, getting the two to make a connection to the sponsored event. So we've obviously gone through a long process of why we're sponsoring the event, or why we're sponsoring whatever we're sponsoring, and you've got to make sure that all links together, and that you've taken it and you can see how you can activate your brand experience and your consumer experience. And I think when you try and develop the 3 of those, you'll come up with the concept. And the concept for me should be the connection. So the activation idea, and you'll see it in the examples, should come from these 3. So it should link in to the attributes of the brand, to the needs of consumers, and to the event, what style of event you're sponsoring. And you really need to work on the concept, because I think concept can be key here, because it'll link you in, particularly when you're developing an activation, trying to stand outside, when you're developing a unique activation, trying to step outside of the box. I'll explain that in a second. So planning, we have two types of planning we talk about in Live Nation. One is pro-activation and one is reactivation. Pro-activation obviously has stronger results. Long-term planning, I mean, there might be a 6-month window from acquiring the sponsorship to the actual activation. Use that time, make sure it's planned right, plan from a costing perspective, a management perspective, an efficiency perspective. I think efficiency is the key here as well. I'll talk about that in a second, but making sure that, particularly in these times, that you're using every pound wisely and that each pound is accountable. And I think that's harder to do in reactivation because, as we all know, everything gets a bit dearer when you're doing it late, doesn't it? Everybody takes advantage and goes, well, so it's harder to get a better bang for your pound in reactivating. But the thing about reactivation is good opportunities, you have to be ready for them to come up at the last minute as well. And collectively as a sponsorship group and as an industry, we need to be very clear that sponsorship needs to be better planned, because a lot of sponsorship can be last minute, and we often find ourselves getting involved in projects at the last minute. But we need to be prepared for the last minute opportunities as well. So the objectives, visibility. So when we're looking at the activation, and when we're evaluating at the end, these are the 6 to 7 things that we check against every piece of activation. We will walk away from an activation piece, or we'll encourage a client to go another route if we feel we're not hitting these objectives. One is visibility. So from a brand perspective, is it going to be visible? Are we rewarding consumers? It's important we reward. Certainly at our events, it's important we reward. It could be a feel-good factor. It doesn't have to be physically something in their hands. Better if it is, but if it's not, it needs to be a feel-good factor that they need to walk away, and that's a reward. Sampling and trial, takes away from sales, doesn't it? So we don't encourage sampling and trial all the time, but it's important to push for sampling and trial if you can for an event. And if I was planning an activation, sampling and trial would be the key for me. Getting people to experience your product or experience your brand. Kellogg's have been brilliant at that. I mean, they've taken units to all our festivals in the UK. They have a good morning breakfast bars in all the campsites, and they try out all the new cereals in it. And rather than having to walk miles to go get your breakfast, you walk straight into a big Kellogg's bar and you try it. It doesn't sound genius, but it is genius. Data capture, to obviously record as much information as you can. Information, we're in the era of information. As much information, it dumbfounds me to see people at events who walk away with no information. It's so easy to capture information. Obviously, there's some more stringent laws, but it needs to be key, and a key objective is to data capture. And then unique experiences is you're going to, in the cluttered world we live in, you need to get cut through, and cut through is often achieved by a unique experience. I would always say the better the idea, probably the more experienced agency. Not necessarily true. We need to look at people, a wider field, and look at people who've got some really, really good ideas and maybe listen to them too. Budget. These are in no particular order, by the way, in case you're thinking, how can we do all this without knowing how much we're going to spend? But budget. I'd like to dispel the myth, and this is something our business has been, unfortunately, had to suffer with for years, is the myth of you have to match the fee in activation spend. Not always true. That was lazy, but basically what that was rights holders making sure the brand supported the event, but actually not thinking it through. So what they wanted to avoid was somebody sponsoring an event and then not seeing them again, and the event, falling short of expectations from consumer perspective because there was no activation. But in fact, what that was doing is it was limiting the opportunity, because people were looking at an event that a sponsorship fee that might be, say, $100 grand, and say, well, the rule is you have to spend another $100 grand. Not necessarily true. You might have to spend 300 grand. You might have to spend 200 grand, or you might have to spend 50 grand. And I think if you go down the road of it, it's very limiting to go down the road of match the fee in the activation spend. I think you need to take each concept and each activation concept on its own merit. You need to support the concept so it'll be effective and meet your objectives. I think that's very obvious. We all have experience in sponsorship where we've seen that we haven't supported it, or we've seen that it hasn't been supported. Particularly, in this day and age when money's a lot tighter, we need to make sure that we're spending our money effectively. So we need to make sure that we're supporting it correctly. Don't limit the opportunities from the off. Don't put up the old barriers of it's too dear, we can't do that. Go with the idea. Okay, you might have to get rid of the idea at the end because it's too dear, but at least go with the idea. and try and harness and develop a good concept. Activate the concept. This is obviously the very obvious bit. I've picked 4 bits out of this that we use and make sure that are achieved. One is efficiency. So if you're sponsoring, say, for example, rugby, and you're going to maybe activate maybe 10 rugby grounds in a year or 5 rugby grounds in a year, can the activation concept get multiple use? So if you're designing something, make sure it can travel, make sure it's hard wearing. One-offs are expensive, so almost plan it as a roadshow rather than plan it as a one-off. You'd be shocked they might take this somewhere else and they pull it down, it costs a fortune. So if you can, do what I know this sounds very, very obvious, but do what other sponsors aren't doing. I'm a huge rugby fan. Everybody in rugby now is doing the exact same thing. Big hands, clappy things that go like that, things that go up with try. Now they're brilliant because the kids love them, but you actually now forget who gave you that the last time. Was it Rabo or was it whoever? It's all sort of blended into one. So what we need to look at now is what other sponsors aren't doing. One thing we haven't put in here, and it really depends what your own budget are and what the ambitions of the companies are, but you should travel. I mean, we always encourage in Live Nation to go and see as many festivals as you can. If you're in whatever your field is, you should be going to see events in the UK, you should be going to see events in other countries to see what they do and how they do it, because you will often generate some really good ideas from there. Challenge the rights holder in order to maximize the opportunity, really important. Sponsors now hold the key. They often don't think they do, but they do, because they have the check. So we have the event, but they have the check. So you got to make sure that you're getting value for money. You got to make sure that you're getting, all the deliverables. I shouldn't be saying this, push, because, obviously, as a rights holder, we don't want people pushing the boundaries too much, but you should be pushing the boundaries to make sure you're getting the full package of deliverables and that you're getting everything and more that you believe to make this sponsorship right work for you. Make sure your activation is offering value and something different to the consumer. If you can step outside the box, I think that's key. I know a lot of these are probably, you might say, God, some of these are quite obvious. But actually, when you roll them all in together as one discipline and you stick by these steps, which we do rigidly, hopefully you'll find some wisdom in them, because the world is changing. We need to attract more sponsors, and we need to get sponsors to get more reward for their hard effort to sponsoring, and the reward they'll get is meeting all their objectives. So evaluation, key. Again, the amount of companies that don't evaluate is shocking, including ourselves at times. Take your evaluation versus objectives. So obviously all the visibility, reward, sampling, trial, sales. If relevant, you may not be selling. Some events you may not be able to sell, some events you might be able to sell. Data capture and unique experience. They need to be measured very clearly on success. Spend on research. I would always say, if you can, allow a percentage of the budget from the off on research. Some people don't believe in research. They you can make that up yourself. It's whatever. You can't. And the age of companies, the big companies now employ research companies who'll cut through your figures. So you need to, if you're planning an event or selling an event, you need competent research, which is going to give a sponsor the real and true information to base their research and post-activity research on. Evaluate results straight after the activation. This is really key. Don't do it 2 months afterwards or 3 months afterwards. Do it straight after the event, because you'll normally find you've gone on to something else and it'll sit in a drawer and it just won't happen. So there are the Live Nation 6 steps from a rights holder perspective. So this is me, Live Nation, I'm sure. How many rights holders are in the room? Are there many rights holders? Oh, few. Pricing. Obviously, we need to be aware now that the world has changed. Before, pricing was, maybe a little bit too non-scientific. It needs to be a little bit more scientific now in terms of what the market is actually saying, and what is the right pricing, because we can often lose events and limit our opportunities by being either too dear. But the other side of that is you don't want to be too cheap either. So it's getting your pricing right and spend money on understanding your pricing. Targeting the right sponsors, again, very obvious, but you got to check from sense check them. Will they add value? I mean, having a sponsor there just because they want to be there and they love your event may not be suitable for your event. Very easy in this day and age to take a sponsor because they're willing to pay you money, but they might be the wrong people to have at the event. So you just need to check that they'll add value, that they will fulfill the needs of the consumer. And again, I'll show you some examples of that very clearly in a second. And then how can the sponsor achieve this? So what can we give them to make sure that they achieve their objectives? Bit of a repetitive point, but. And then just look after the sponsor. This is the fun bit. Give them enough space to activate. Don't tell the guy he's got an inch there to activate and put up a stand. Tell him, look after him. This is the days of looking after sponsors. Give them a strong deliverable package, strong as you can, comparative, and then remove the traditional barriers. And the traditional barriers are, there used to be for years that our event was the be-all and end-all, and we're in the entertainment business, and aren't you lucky to be part of it? Those days are gone. We're now lucky to have sponsors. So it's changing that mentality. So, the fun bit, I think. The first case study, we would do probably somewhere up about 300 activations across all our festivals. So I was trying to pick the 3 best. Unfortunately, I'm under our policy, because we work with so many different partners, I can't share results with you, but I probably share them one-to-one if anybody needs to know specifically afterwards. But so what I'm doing is just giving you an overview of some of the activation at festivals. The first one is SEAT and one of our festival brands, Festival Republic, their partnership at Reading and Leeds. Have any of you ever been to Reading or Leeds Festival? So Reading or Leeds is it's one of our biggest festivals, sells out every year. It's a very strong 18 to 24 festival. SEAT, the car company, for one of their smaller models, I should know the name of it, but I don't, whatever their small model is targeted at 18 to 24-year-olds. Identified that music and identified that festivals, particularly sold-out festivals, was where their brand wanted to be. Why they wanted to be there was to offer something that money can't buy. So then, if you go back to my triangle of the brand, the consumer, and the event, they had to look for a link, and you'll see the link in a minute. The drive signed up to their another key objective was to sign up to their members portal, Club SEAT, so is to encourage then test drives and get people signed up to it, and then create content to populate the site. So they did lots of music-related promotions on the site to win tickets and win VIP camping tickets, etc. But what they developed was, they developed a SEAT season of music promoting the Club SEAT using Reading and Leeds Festival database and Universal Records. So they targeted hundreds of thousands of 18 to 24-year-olds, narrowed down to who actually had tickets. And then they communicated SEAT's access to solo festival tickets. So if you didn't have tickets, which they knew that you probably didn't have a ticket because we'd cross-reference against our list of who'd bought tickets. And then they promoted the on-site SEAT human car wash experience. And what the human car wash was, you'll see it now in a minute. I think it's incredible. I witnessed it on a number of occasions. So they took the brand, which was a car, and they took the needs of the consumer at a festival, a wash, and they put them together. And it was the first time we'd ever seen this, and this is what happened. I was very sensitive. There were a few risque photographs that I took out. I actually probably should have left them in now, but I said I had to get so I've gone for the wimpish photograph. So basically what they did was they built a massive human car wash at a container. So they had to think, right, we have to go to a couple of festivals here. So this goes back to the efficiency. So they built it out of 4 containers, arrived by lorries, in it went, all connected up together. Very simple concept. You arrived, covered in mud, went in, got your car washed. They took your clothes, laundered them. You went in and wore temporary clothing, if you wanted. And you go wash, temporary. And then you came back and then you collected your clothes at the end. Everyone's a winner, but you obviously had to sign up to the SEAT Club before you did that. So that's the car wash there. Full all day long. People were actually, got a bit mad at the end. People were actually diving through the mud just to get into the car wash, as you'll see here. Queues, one of the longest queues for anything was the SEAT human car wash. So from an activation perspective, instant relevance, an instant reason to be there. Often you can not have a reason to be there and be there and get lost. There you go, there's a girl, it was the worst showers there, but she's adding in some extra water. And there's some of our participants, models. I can't give you the exact results, but it was a huge success for them. They got a huge amount of, they actually I think they had a target of 400 test drives, and I think they got 800 out of it. So from a brand perspective, it was a phenomenal success. Brand recognition was 84%, and 92% had seen the activation at the festival, which is, you got to think there's 80,000, 100,000 people at these festivals. They don't get to see everything because people are either watching the bands or in the festival site or in the tents or whatever, or incapacitated. No, we don't get around to see stuff. So it had a very good strong following. So conclusion, the human car wash demonstrates good activation combined with the relevance of the brand, which was the car, needs of the consumer at a festival, the wash, producing a great concept. So that's the link of that piece of wisdom. Just some other ones, basically these are just visual case studies. As we all know, in Holland, even though they brew buckets of beer, they love their coffee. At festivals, we have several festivals in Holland. One is Lowlands and one is Pink Pop. Again, there are 100,000 people. Douwe Egberts is one of our principal partners, but this was the sort of stuff they were doing every year, and it was, how many times have we all seen that? A pop-up tent with a coffee sign on it. So we sat down with them, the Dutch, my equivalent in Holland, sat down with them and our UK central team and said, you need to work harder at these festivals, you need to see the link, you need to look at the consumer and say, what do they need? Okay, they just don't need to buy coffee, they need an experience. And the concept was to be able to bring coffee back to their tents and have the experience back in the camping site, not just have it in the festival. So this is what they created, which was a coffee village, a coffee experience. Still got the tent in behind it, but they've covered it and done it properly this time. And they brought in the barista machines, which are the series for the coffee lovers. It was the only stand that went 24 hours a day. They did increase sales by about 600-700%. It was just phenomenal. People could go and get a really good coffee experience, and they kept their pricing quite low. They then produced the coffee cafeterias, which go down to the old camping style pots, Douwe Egberts. You could buy them very cheaply. I'm not sure how much, but they were quite cheap. And the coffee, and you bring back to your tent and enjoy it like that. They did 17,000 of them, I think, or something phenomenal. So they're very, very proud of that concept. We're now rolling that across a lot of our festivals. And then the last one was, it was up in the air what I would show you, but just because Rory Sheridan from Diageo is here and he probably wouldn't talk to me for a long time, I didn't show you Captain Morgan rum, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Captain Morgan is on the march as a festival brand, and hopefully we'll be doing a lot more with Captain Morgan at all our festivals across Europe very shortly. It's a real fun brand. We had avoided oxygen. Heineken were doing a great thing, Vodafone were doing their recharge, Pepsi were doing their thing, but there was something missing in terms of a central place to meet and be cool and be hip and be trendy and have an experience of where the cool, funky, in Ireland they're all now rugby players, but in the funky people to hang out are, and we didn't have something like that. We'd sort of lost that direction. So we sat down with Captain Morgan and we developed a Captain Morgan experience. And they agreed, and he's quite difficult to get. They agreed to bring in the captain himself, who's he's actually a highly paid actor who plays Captain Morgan. And he came in and we ran a series of daily shows and daily, I think there was about 6 daily shows, which was like, we tried to beat the world rock the boat record. So stuff like that. Everybody came in, got a Captain Morgan hat. That was the experience. Fulfilled the need of the consumer, which was to have a sort of a central focus and reward. Everybody coming in got a captain hat. They had stages with bands and promoting the mixability of Captain Morgan. So they're promoting which was probably the key objective from the brand perspective, is to show the mixability of Captain Morgan. Shouldn't be a bit early to try and convince you to have a Captain Morgan in orange, but you should. It's a great experience. And they, everybody walking away from a recall perspective, everybody remembered the Captain Morgan experience. So much that Captain Morgan now are in talks with us on developing that relationship right across our European festivals. That's just some of the bars, some of the activations. They went in, they built it like an old pirate's stand, and they did a phenomenal job. And there's 3 people with Captain Morgan hats. And there's the captain himself. So there you go. That's the wisdom of Live Nation. So I don't know if any of you have any questions. Oh, God.
Just asking, what's the structure of Live Nation? Because it seems to me that a lot of the value you've parlayed up is because of the scale that you've brought to it. Is it a single company, or is it a federation of some description?
No, it's a single company. It's a listed American company that features in 17 markets globally. We would have partnerships and relations locally. So, for example, the MCD relationship, we'd have a management contract with them to manage some of their sponsorships and look after one or two other elements within their product. Like we would be the management team on Oxygen, for example. So they would use elements of our business, but MCD are a wholly owned separate business. Festival Republic would be a company that we would part own. We'd own the majority stake. We'd own 51% of it, which would be our main festival brand. So, yeah, we're an individual company, but we have partnerships and relations outside of that would extend into other aspects of the business. I suppose what we tend to try and do is, where we're not experts, we try to partner with people who are experts, and Festival Republic are the experts in festivals, particularly the boutique festivals and etc. So, yeah.
Sorry to use the word recession. Is this working? Yeah. Sorry to use the word recession,
yeah.
But in this recession, as they say, it's happening. Has that affected your business in terms of either numbers or pricing?
Yes and yes. I'm not going to give you that cliched spin of out of recession comes opportunity, but I think that's where we are as a company. I think I think there are definitely less acts touring. There are definitely less people have an appetite to go to events because of the economic situation. We're very mindful of that. However, as I outlined at the start of the presentation, I think the Irish people are very resilient in terms of difficult times, and entertainment is one area of which. So we're not. The Europeans are seeing a massive downturn. We're seeing a slight downturn, but we're very mindful of pricing, and I think pricing is going to be key for 2012. But this year you saw maybe across the island, I don't know, include maybe you saw about 6 or 8 festivals and maybe about 12, 15 major outdoor concerts. Next year there's going to be about 30. So, but what that's really based on making sure we bring quality product and it's priced right and that we're offering value. So, yeah, we are definitely, I mean, the times are difficult. The good times are gone. I mean, it was for a long time Ireland was doing, certainly I know from our own venue, the O2, we were doing 130, 140 shows a year, which is phenomenal for a music venue. This year it'll be about 100. Next year it'll be about 100. So while there is a downturn, it's not dramatic. But it is dramatic in one sense. Any downturn is dramatic, but it's not. Pricing is the key. I think it's a very astute comment there, because pricing is the key, and I think across everyone's business we're all going to have to watch it next year. But also bringing quality events and quality product is going to be key as well. Is that it?
Is it all music?
Rock and roll, all rock and roll. Is it all music? No, it's not all music. No, it's theatre. It's right across. Right, I mean, through our venues business. Sorry, thought I did turn it off. It's just a text. Stop telling lies. No. It's live entertainment. I mean, we would, but probably from a management perspective and a touring perspective, it's mainly music. We're specialists in music, but through a lot of our venues and our venue operations, obviously theatres, albeit we did sell off our major theatre division to the Ambassador Group 2 years ago. So it's less and less theatre, but with Grand Canal now and some other, and House of Blues in the US that would have varied events, but it's mainly music, but not totally music. We sell tickets through our Ticketmaster business, sell tickets for everything. So it's a much wider scope than just music.
smaller sponsors as opposed to one large one?
This is going to sound a bit basic, but we can go for any sponsor really who's interested in doing business with us. I think we need, and I don't mean that to be quite basic, but I think I'd love the luxury of being able to. I mean, we have very clear sponsorship strategies, and they are based on title partners all the way through associate partners. Ireland, in particular, we've led the way in terms of naming rights for our venues. We've worked on the founding partner structure, then of having senior venue partners thereafter. And then have sub-partners, supply partners. So we would have a sort of a trio structure across all our. So if my team or I are selling a sponsorship or trying to acquire a partner, we would follow that sort of model, which would be primarily to look for a title partner. So something presents, or in this case, Tennent's Vital, for example. And often they would be linked, because it's a beer company, would be linked to supply. But so I think we would always look for a title partner. We'd also look for a major sponsor, but we would also look for sub-partners. But so I don't think we've definitely, because of the current market, I don't think we've changed that. I think what you are getting in terms of sponsorship fees is going to change. But the events speak for themselves. I mean, at the end of the day, in the thing we all have to remember is in difficult times we have to sell, and the harder you have to sell. So you'll probably find more sponsors out there. You'll probably find more people. People would probably, I don't know if there's anybody, I always get something thrown at me when I start mentioning advertising and stuff. But sometimes people do change some of their focus in these times from advertising, from blanket awareness to the direct targeting of consumers through, avenues like sales, promotion, etc. But they'd also use sponsorship quite actively. So I think we're not going to change we're not. I'm not saying you, I don't know where you're from, but I'm not saying you should change that you should follow our strategy, but our strategy is to always look for a major partner and then sub-partners and then supply partners, if we can.
Sorry, can I just add on to Electric Picnic,
Yeah.
which I think is one of your, there are no, unless I got it wrong, as a punter there's no obvious major sponsor?
No.
Yeah, okay.
But it's up for sale.
I'm on the other end.
There you go. Yeah, it's actually, the picnic's interesting. Actually, the picnic is through our festival public brand. So actually, I actually don't personally sell the picnic. The picnic is sold through another company. We will be taking over the sales of the picnic, or working with them. But through my working for Aikens 7 or 8 years ago, we were the founding partners of the picnic. The picnic it's cool. Commercial and cool don't necessarily work. You go to Glastonbury, no partners anywhere. And I thought, should I have hidden them? No hidden partners, no partners. They've beer partners, stuff like that, but they're not allowed to have any branding and stuff like that. But that almost is actually cool, so cool that it works for the brands. Picnic doesn't have that luxury, so what it's had to do is have sub-partners, and it's got, were any of you there this year? The Picnic? No, it's cool. The Picnic was cool this year. It's slightly, not less cool, it needs to, we need to be mindful of the fact now that it probably had a little bit more of a ravier element this year to it, probably a little bit more of an edge to it, the way the market had gone. But we would love to sell the title of the Picnic, but not always possible. A lot of the festival public products won't sell the title because the name is bigger than any partner. So, but that could change. So we would sell it if we could, basically.
Sorry, you mentioned earlier during your presentation
Yep.
that in some instances sponsors may not be suited to the product or event. In what circumstances would you turn a sponsor away?
We've done it quite a few times, actually, would you believe it? I think we would turn, if we felt, there's obvious ones. The Durex brand, for example, has tried to promote in our business for years and years and years, and because of, where we are, so I'm going to be careful what I say here, but we just had to turn the Durex brand away, and they have lots of money. That's an obvious one, so I won't insult you by giving you that one. Where we've normally had to turn people away is where we genuinely believe that they're in it for the wrong reasons, and where we believe that they'll be a short-term partner. And what I mean by that is that we've had a recent example of where a car company wants to do business with us, and the reason they wanted to do business with us was just to get tickets, so they could leverage sales from a local level, a local dealership level, because of a sold-out show. Now that for us is the wrong reason to give somebody, because those tickets are going to sell anyway. So what we need from that sponsor is for them to give us a 3 to 5 year commitment that they're going to work with us as a partner, and they were prepared to do that. So what they were prepared to do is do a 1 year. So we would normally turn somebody away if their intentions, if we felt their intentions weren't right. There'd be very few brands that you wouldn't take. Well, there would be a few, like gambling causes us a bit of a problem. There'll be some of the gambling houses that would want to do stuff that we would sort of probably say no, we can't. We'd like to, because they have lots of money, but so it would be because of the brand and what the brand could probably give the event, or what we're trying to do, a different slant that we wouldn't necessarily work for the event, but mainly it's because of the sponsor's intention, and that's why we'd mainly turn them away.
Your Ticketmaster business, is that open for small or medium businesses to get involved with? And if so, how do they go about it?
I'm actually the wrong person to answer a question on that, but I can give you a number. Somebody can answer that question for you. When I say Ireland is the only market where we're actually separate businesses, and the reason we're separate businesses here is because Ticketmaster represents all promoters, and because there's multiple promoters, so they have to keep all the information away from us. So they not only represent Live Nation Entertainment, but they also represent Aiken Promotions, they also represent Ulster Rugby, they also represent the GAA. So in terms of information, they keep it very. So we run it as two separate businesses. So that's the only thing I'd like not to comment on, if possible, would be the Ticketmaster business, because I'm not too au fait with it, apart from their booking fees. Sorry, I missed you there. Yeah. Yeah. Not at all, no, not at all. And not to give you a short answer, I'll try and explain why it hasn't, is because I think in any event, we see it in the GAA, we see it in rugby, we see it, everywhere. People can misbehave, not just at festivals. It's probably a large proportion of misbehavior than anywhere else at festivals, because you're putting so many people together in a campsite. If you went to a campsite with 16,000 people in it, you're not going to like everyone. But no, we've been very mindful. What I will say, actually, we've been very mindful about partners who we put into campsites, that you certainly wouldn't be exposing brands to campsites that possibly could be sensitive to something that would go. So no, I mean genuinely, Rory's here from Diageo. He's one of the partners of Oxygen. He'd say as well, no, absolutely not, no. I mean, and I'll also be very honest there, that you're talking about one instance at Oxygen, 1 out of 4 days with, 60,000 people at it per day is, and there's always, so no is the answer.
Richard, how do you capture the experience or the engagement beyond photographs, and how do you distribute that as well?
Sorry, yeah, explain that to me again. Sorry,
how do you, beyond photograph? I mean, we saw some photos and images of people at the festivals. How do you capture the engagement or the experience of the engagement beyond photographs?
As a brand or from a Live Nation perspective?
Both.
O2 have been brilliant at this, actually. What they've done is they've engaged a web portal called Blue Room, which they video and Vox Pop, and they try and bring the experience. I mean, if you haven't been there, you haven't been there. I mean, that's as simple as that. I mean, I think if you're trying to share the experience, it's very difficult to share a live festival experience, but what you can do is share the experience of other people. So I think I'm getting your question, but I think it's quite difficult to do that. I mean, we do it through video. We spend a lot of time and money on capturing the experience and the emotions and the fun and the laughter of festivals on video and try and relay it on websites. And obviously, we're in the world of apps now, so you can now go to any of our festival apps and see the experience and get live links to tents. We try and put a lot of live cameras into tents, trying people to get the live experience. But we don't want them sitting at home watching the live experience. We want them at the gig. So that's why don't try and do too much of that. So I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly, but it is quite difficult to do.
Richard, you mentioned that for your sponsorship contracts, sponsors might sign on for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
But are you finding in the more difficult times that people are wanting to shorten their duration and sign for 1 or 2 years?
Yeah, very much so. And that's one of the biggest dangers. If you were to swat our business for the next 5 years, that's our biggest fear, is that the term of contracts commitment is going to get shorter. A lot of companies now will put a corporate angle of saying, sorry, we can only sign, globally we can only sign a 3-year deal with you, or a 2-year deal. Live Nation's policy has always been to sign a 5-year deal. In the case of naming rights, the minimum we've just signed one in Dublin actually for 6.5 years, but that's totally against the run of play. That's indicative of the market actually, but time's been reduced slightly, but used to be 15 years, 15, 18 years. And that's more for us, but it's also more for, the problem with signing 2-year deals is a brand and a product or a company going to get the value in 2 years? Years always sort of getting to know each other and getting the right activation and getting the right program together. So it can actually be, while you're thinking, well, great, okay, I'm a marketing manager, I'm only going to sign to this 2 years, and how much damage can 2 years cause, versus wouldn't it be great to create something here that's going to build over the next 3 to 5 years that's really going to deliver on the strategy and our objectives? So yeah, it is a danger, and unfortunately I think it's short term, and I don't think it's the right strategy, but it is definitely, brands are definitely starting to look at shorter term deals, definitely.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that winds up the question and answer session.
Great.
Round of applause, please, for Richard Tierney
Thanks.
from Live Nation.